perspective as a for-profit, or from the nonprofit side as a donor, there's a cycle, right? And we take proven business strategies and apply them to nonprofit fundraising. And that's why we call what we do cause selling. But this webinar, we realized, is applicable to both for-profit and nonprofit. And we think you're really going to like it. That's why we brought in one of our favorite instructors, Miss Joanna Brandy. And quick bit about her. She is a positive leadership coach and national consultant. She's an author. She's a national speaker. And she's worked for both for-profits and nonprofits around the country to help them with both their client relationships and their donor relationships. So Joanna, thank you in advance for a wonderful session, and we will make sure technically we can get Lori with us as soon as possible.
She's on, I see her on there, but I saw her live, so yeah. Diane's, oh, all right. Hi. Hello before we get started, Lori. We did your part already, so you'll just have to just say hello and greet people in your own special way. Why don't you take a moment and do that?
I just wanted to welcome everybody from my standpoint. Raylan, did you tell the story about how this webinar came about?
I did it in a quick bit, and I'm not sure that I did it justice.
Well, I'm sure you did, but basically it was my major donor, longtime donor, who told me that I walked away from the table and left something behind. And I said, well, what do you mean? And she said, you know, you could really use some more training on the ask. And I said, great. She suggested a webinar, and I said, that would be incredible. Would you fund that? And as a result, it was send me a proposal, and here we are today. And here I am to learn as well. So thank you for joining us, everyone.
Oh, and you know what? That's such a lovely story. It kind of shows that there are unintended consequences of even not doing it right, that we just have to get out there and keep doing it, right? And we're going to keep practicing getting webinars going for you. So this is Asking Made Easier, a 4-part series that's going to get you to the heart of fundraising and sales success. So whether you're joining us as a fundraiser or a salesperson or in any other capacity, this is about human nature. So there's a lot here to learn. So my first question is, how hard is it for you to ask what you want? How hard is it for you to ask what you want? For some of us, it's really hard. It's darn hard. Depending on how you were raised, what you were told as a child, maybe don't be greedy, or don't want so much. Whatever your belief systems were before you're 8 years old, set the foundation for how you take off and what you're able to do in life. I'm going to start with a little personal story. My mom, I'm old school. Let's just leave it at that. I'm old school. And I lived back in the day when moms opened the door and let the kids go. And so she would let us go. I'd say, I'm going to my friend's house, and she'd say, great. And then she would say this to me: don't ask for anything while you're there. Don't ask for milk. Don't ask for cookies. Don't ask. And I'd say, but Mom, what if I'm really thirsty? And she would say, it's permissible. My mother was a lawyer. It's permissible to ask for a glass of water, but that's it. Now, can you even imagine what this early imprinting did to me? I can tell you that in my 20s, I still wasn't even able to say, I'm next at the bakery, because I was so programmed not to ask for what I want. So I'm curious if there are others out there like me. Now, I've come a long way, baby, and you're going to hear a lot about it. But I'm really curious from your own experience, whether it's asking for something personally or asking for something professionally, how hard or how comfortable is it for you? Let's take a quick poll. On a scale of 1 to 5, 1 meaning really easy and 5 meaning really hard, how comfortable is it for you to go for the ask in either your personal or your professional life? That poll should be up on your screen. Oh, we're going there. Whoop, whoop, it's bouncing all over the place. So far, it's not really easy for anybody. Okay, we still have people coming in, so I'm going to give it just a moment or two. This will give me an idea of the audience. Oh, we have one person so far that said it's really easy. Yes, that's lovely. And someday that will be me. Okay, we're not quite timed out yet. There's still a few people that haven't come in onto the poll. I'm hoping that wherever you are, you're enjoying your lunch, that you're having relatively good weather. From this window, I have a blue sky. From this window, it's cloudy, so I can't tell what the weather's like. Okay, we're just going to give this another, well, barely another moment. I think we've got 75% of you in, and I see the numbers have stopped coming in. So let's end that poll, and let's share the results. And there you are. Somebody said it's really easy. Yay. For some of you, it's moderately easy. Okay, so for you, I'm hoping to give you a little bit of a boost, a little bit of something. I hope you're going to stay for the whole 4-part series over the next 4 months. Most people, at 37%, say it's not so easy. And I would fall into that category myself. 15% said it's usually hard, and 11% said it's very hard. So that gives me a gauge, and I appreciate that so much. Let me close that poll and move on. Okay, my machine is taking just a little while here. Okay. Relations are everything, and everything is relationships, said Buckminster Fuller. I just want to tell you a little story about how I got started and how I know so much of this stuff. I got a job many years ago at a corporation in New York. I'm a New Yorker. You may hear a little of that in my voice. And I worked for a small technology company that was housed inside a large technology publishing company. And when I started, I was hired as a manager. Figured that's easy peasy. It would be some simple thing. It was a little mail order company. And then they decided to close that business and fold us into the main company. And they told us to take our most profitable product and only sell that. Well, it turned out our most profitable product were our mailing lists. And so without much notice, without much to do, we folded one business and opened up the other one with only that product. Now, I knew nothing about that business because I was brand new. So after all this took place, one day my boss, John, I had said to him, John, I really don't know anything about this business. I need some help. If I'm expected now to sell, I'm not a salesperson. If I'm expected to sell, then I need some help. Well, you know what he did? On his way out to the gym, I might say that John was older and really eager to retire. So he figured he's got somebody here that can take over, which I did. But he took the file drawer with all of the customer names, pulled it out, and literally dumped it upside down into my lap and said, you're a smart girl, figure it out. So I remember sitting there saying to myself, what am I going to do? I don't know anything about sales. So I very boldly started calling everyone in that file drawer. And I told the story about what my boss had done to every single one of them, which made me very human and very vulnerable. And I said to each one of them, I need your help in understanding what this whole business is about. I need your help in telling me what you need and how I can help you. And to the person, every one of the people in that bottom drawer spent the time with me to teach me the business. So I actually learned my business from my customers, and it was all that I knew because it was all about relationships. So 12 years later, when this intrapreneur decided to become an entrepreneur, I just knew I needed to change up things a little bit. I wanted to do something that had more heart and meaning. So I went back to those very same customers and I asked this question: what do I do best? And every one of them said the same thing. What you do best is take care of your customers. And so I started a company that was all about customer care. Diana, I'm going to check with you one more time. I don't see a recording button. If we're recording, we're cool, but I'm checking in just one more time because usually I see a little red button. So if we are, that's cool. So
Yep,
that's
we're
how
good.
we're good. Okay, I just wanted to make sure. I'm used to seeing certain things on the screen that I'm not seeing today. Thank you very much for jumping in there. So that's how I started a company. So then I began to think about it. If business is all about relationships, what are those relationships? So I came up with this image in my head. Your business, profit or nonprofit, your business sits on top of a three-legged configuration, very much like a tripod. I call this the working relationship tripod. Each one of those legs represents a different set of relationships. There's the relationships that you have externally. Those are your donors, those are your customers, those are your suppliers. That's anybody that's outside the company. There's the relationships that you have internally, and those are all the employees. And I would include, if you have volunteers, I would include your volunteers in that group there because you work as a cohesive team. And then there's one other relationship that is so critical to how this works and whether or not that business stands tall. And that's the relationship you have with yourself. That's the relationship that determines whether or not you wake up in the morning with an attitude that says, yes, I can do it, and get out there and do what needs to be done, or the relationship that says, I really don't want to be here. I don't really enjoy this. Or, oh darn, I have to go to work. Now, I'm giving you two extremes, but where do you fall in between those two extremes? Your relationship with yourself is critical because you are the point of origin for success. So that's the working relationship tripod. Now, one of the other things I did in the course of this year, it's 29 years of being in business, is I needed to define what is this thing called the customer experience. Now, it doesn't make any difference what you call that end person, whether you're calling them a donor, whether there's somebody here from the hospitality business that's using the word guest, whether or not there's somebody here for the medical business that's using the word patient, doesn't matter. It's the experience of that person, customer, donor, guest, or patient. Where does it come from? It's the sum total of the feelings that are evoked as a result of any interaction at any touch point in the organization. Any interaction at any touch point in the organization, whether that's a phone call, whether that's a piece of mail, whether that's your internet, whether that's you in person, whether that's your logo on something that they see. It doesn't matter. Touch points are happening. There are thousands of touch points in customer and donor and patient and guest experiences. And what happens is that the sum total of those feelings are added up. And then it's based on the customer's perception of whether or not you delivered the value they were expecting, whether the value is tangible or intangible. And very often, especially in the fundraising business, that value is intangible. It's about how people feel. So I'd like you to think of it this way. You've got a little checklist in your head, and so does your client, your donor. So does everybody has a little checklist in their head. There's a positive column and there's a negative column. And every one of those touch points, every one of those moments of truth, we're making an evaluation of the quality of the care that's being delivered to us. Everyone. And then at the end of the day, or at the end of the experience, we draw a line at the bottom and we add it up. And we say we either had we may not say this to ourselves out loud, and chances are we don't, but you'll know by how you feel whether or not you had a great experience or not a great experience. So there are all of those moments of truth where another person has the opportunity to make a judgment about the quality of care that you're delivering. The quality of care that you're delivering. In my time in business, I made the choice very early on not to use the word customer service, because I don't know about you, but I have my car serviced and I have my air conditioner serviced. I'm not looking to be serviced. I'm looking to be cared for and about. So I turn that into an acronym that was really useful. C-A-R-E means create authentic relationships with enthusiasm, with energy. That's what I'm talking about today. How do we deliver that level of care to the people we're working with, whether we're asking for money or whether we're asking for, well, we're always asking for money, whether we're asking for money for a nonprofit or whether we're asking for money to buy a product. How do we deliver this level of customer care? It used to be, and excuse me, here we're all working with some notes today. It used to be that we talked about the golden rule, didn't we? We talked about we treat others the way we want to be treated. Most of us were taught that way. But you know what? It doesn't work that way anymore because people want to be treated many different ways. So now we're talking about the platinum rule. Treat others the way they want to be treated. Now, how do you know the way they want to be treated? Well, that's what relationship building is all about. Treat others the way they want to be treated. And today we're going to talk about the topic we promised, which is how to stay on the tracks. You know, in the old way of selling, or the old way of fundraising, I should say, we used a model that focused about 40% of our attention on the ask. And I would say probably pretty much straight across the board. You know, there was the old model, and you'll hear about this in one of our later seminars. You know that there was a movie where the ABCs of selling was always be closing, always be closing. Well, that's really the old way of selling now. It's really changed because there's just so much. There's so many organizations out there. There's so many charities out there. There's so many businesses out there. Everything is competitive. Nobody wants to be in relationship with somebody who's always trying to close them. People want to be in relationship with people who care. So the SIP model, the Sanford Institute model, is very different. The modern method is to spend more time on building the relationship. Spend that 40% on building the relationship. It actually takes less energy and is so much more pleasurable. So the relationship building really needs to come before the ask. So what does this stay on the tracks thing mean? Well, I am a speaker and what's called a resource for Vistage, which is the world's largest CEO peer-to-peer group organization. And I've been one for 21 years. And I teach both positive leadership and customer loyalty there. And whenever I'm teaching customer loyalty, I talk about qualities of relationship. What are the qualities of relationship that are vital, that are necessary for that relationship to become a loyal, lifetime relationship? So I take a flip chart and I ask the question, and then I just let those CEOs tell me what they're thinking. Well, after a few years of doing this, I began to notice a pattern. I get different answers all the time, but there are certain answers that show up every time. And I created a theory about it, and I created a special report about it, and I started talking about it in my newsletters because it felt, we're back to the feelings again, it felt so strong and so grounded that throughout time now, I've been able to use that in my consulting practice and my speaking practice to be sure that this is what builds a rock-solid relationship with people. The first letter of the acronym is T, and T stands for trust. Now, we all know how important trust is. But trust is about making good on your promises. Making good on your promises. Doing what you say you're going to do. When you do that, over and over and over again, what you do is you're putting check marks in the plus column in that person's body-mind. And you're accruing an emotional bank account with people. You can call it a trust account if you want. You're accruing this emotional bank account with people over time. And I must tell you, if you ever need to draw on that, these are the people that are more than willing to give you a little leeway because you've built up trust strong over time. Trust means be as consistent as you can be in your behavior. It makes your prospect or your donor feel so much more comfortable when you're somewhat predictable. We're not asking you to be a robot, but when you are somewhat predictable in your behavior. I once had a boss that was really unpredictable in his behavior. One day he was Dr. Jekyll, the next day he was Mr. Hyde. I finally quit the boss because I felt like I had to change my behavior in response to how he was acting that day. So it's really important to know who you are and understand how other people perceive you. And by the way, it's okay to ask. I would ask my colleagues first. But it's okay to ask others how they perceive you and get some honest and ask for honest feedback so you can be as consistent as you can be in your behavior and still stay in your comfort zone. Listen actively and attentively. You're going to hear a lot about listening in this program. At Sanford Institute, we say you don't talk people into giving gifts, you listen people into giving gifts. Because you're building that relationship and you're understanding what their needs are. So fundraisers and salespeople that are successful in acquiring gifts understand that underneath that underlying internal motivation and the external motivation that the donors have. So it's really getting under their skin and listening twice as much as we speak. That's why we have 2 ears and only one mouth. Avoid judgments, blames, and criticism. That's a trap we all get into. We go and we meet someone and we walk away from them, and even internally we're making a judgment. That was a nice person. That wasn't a nice person. That guy was great. That guy was not so great. We're always making those judgments. Tame that down because that is going to impact your behavior the next time you see that prospect. So avoid judgments, blames, and criticism. When you're giving feedback to others, now again, remember the tripod. So we could be talking about our donors here, we could be talking about our customers here, we could also be talking about the person that's sitting at the next desk, because we need to build trust with them too. Building trust inside an organization is foundational to being successful outside an organization. Give feedback that is specific, useful, and I probably should have put the word positive there. However, not all feedback is going to be positive, especially if you're a leader, but all of it can be constructive. Constructive feedback. Notice I didn't say constructive criticism. Constructive feedback. Seek to understand before being understood. That is one of my favorite teachers, which is Stephen Covey. Seek first to understand before being understood. Now, how hard is that? Because, of course, we all have our story and we all want to tell our story. But it's really important that we first, and you might want to put that little motto somewhere on a Post-it note in your car. So when you're going out to have that face-to-face meeting, and by the way, 90% of your gifts are going to come in because of a face-to-face meeting. So get used to it because it's probably not going to happen over the phone. Put a little Post-it note in your car that says, seek first to understand, and it will change your perspective. And create an environment where people's feelings count. You may have noticed I've used the word feelings a lot. Now, I know that most people consider feelings the F word in business, but we are all human beings. We're not just humans buying, we're human beings, and our feelings count. Because every feeling we have kicks off a biochemical reaction in the body that produces neurotransmitters, that produces hormones, that produces a set of feelings that either make us feel good and build our immune system or make us feel bad and make us angry. So feelings are really important in any relationship at all, business or otherwise. So build that trust account strong. The second letter, I always feel like I should sing this, R-E-S-P-E-C-T. I did. Respect. Listen to others with the intention of understanding the meaning behind what they are saying. I'm going to say that again. Listen to others with the intention of understanding the meaning behind their words. Make sincere connections with others. No kiss, kiss, hug, love, let's do lunch kind of thing. Make a real connection. Look into their eyes. Take my glasses off. Look into their eyes. Make that connection. Smile. One of my teachers is Barbara Fredrickson, who wrote the book Positivity and the book Love 2.0, which talks about creating these micro moments of connection, these micro moments of positivity. It's as simple as looking at someone and giving them a smile, because the smile on my face is changing the biochemistry in your brain. So an act of respect to whoever you meet is to look in their eyes and make that sincere connection. Don't be looking at your phone. Don't be looking at something else, even if you're at the checkout at Publix. Look into people's eyes, smile at them, and make that connection. Pay attention to what matters to others. Listen carefully to what they're saying. There's that word again. Listen carefully to what they're saying, to what matters to them. Everybody's got a different style, and everybody's going to approach things differently. And you can learn. You'll have to come to one of our in-person programs on the different styles, because learning those styles is so important, because then we understand what's important to someone else. And then we tailor our presentation to put the things that are important to them up first. That way, you're taking their concerns into consideration first, an act of respect, and take people seriously. I don't know how many times I've heard somebody say, oh, that guy's a jerk. You know, please leave the blame, judgment, and criticism somewhere else. Take people seriously. Take their concerns seriously, an act of respect. Notice when other people do things right and smile at them and say, I appreciate that. Well, we're going to get to that in just a minute. I appreciate when you do it that way. Notice the things that are important. When you're sitting in a prospect's office, notice the things around them that matter to them. There's a big heart behind me. Now, what matters to me? Things that come from the heart, of course. Be courteous and polite. And that is a skill that I, unfortunately, am seeing is not happening as much as it should. But it all starts with you. You are the point of origin. So when you're courteous and polite, other people are more likely to be courteous and polite as well. Appreciation. Oh my, this is a topic that I could talk about a lot. I became a happiness coach 14, or maybe now it's 15 years ago, and have studied appreciation extensively, and still feel like I haven't, I just don't even know enough, because it becomes a feeling. Appreciation becomes that deep, heart-based feeling. The first thing is to let other people know they're valued. You know, I work a lot with companies where I'm involved with their employees because I'm teaching leadership, of course. So one thing that I teach people is that if it's your employee's job, your teammates' job to create value in the marketplace, then they better be feeling valued in the workplace. If you want someone to do a good job, if you want someone to create value, and you're certainly wanting your donors to create value, you're certainly wanting your fundraising team to create value, you're certainly wanting your customer care team to create value. If you want people to create value, make sure you let them know how much they are valued. And do that specifically, not just atta girl, atta boy, but very specifically. Look for things to appreciate and express them freely. Express it freely. I appreciate my teammates here. They have been so precise and helpful in getting this webinar off the ground. I appreciate Lori's overarching vision. I appreciate the way Ray Lynn looks at she can look at things from high and from the detail base at the same time. So she's given us all the details we need to get things moving along today. I appreciate Diana's support because she is always there to help out and make sure that when I get nervous about things, she says, I got it. That's what I mean about expressing things freely. We've got a great team here. And I want them all to know that I appreciate them. So look for things to appreciate and express it freely. Build those emotional bank accounts deeply, richly, profoundly, because that's what gets you back in the door. That's what makes you a joy for a client to see, or a donor to see. I'm so sorry. My language goes all over the place because I work with so many different kinds of companies. But isn't it wonderful to think that someone's sitting at their desk going, wow, T.R.A.C.K.S is coming. And really love the idea of Lori showing up, because every time Lori shows up, it makes them feel good. That's wonderful thing. Cultivate your own appreciation and gratitude practice. Now, this is where you really start. I started with a practice called it was originally called the 3 blessings and why, but I wanted to take it into the business world. So I changed it just a little bit, and I call it the 3 good things and why. Every night, before you go to bed, or you could do it at dinner, or you could do it at the end of your workday, think about your day. And think about 3 good things that happened to you that day and why they happened. After a while, you're going to notice some patterns. Now, they have to be 3 different things every day. So you can't get at the end of the day go, I love my family, I love my job, I love my work. Can't do that. We want to broaden your capacity for experiencing appreciation, broaden your capacity for experiencing positivity. And by the way, if you stick with us all through this 4-part series, you're going to hear a lot of this positive psychology science of happiness woven into it, because it's part of who I am. So cultivate that practice. Here's something called an appreciation audit that I teach all my leaders 3 to 5 times during the day. And you can program your phone to buzz you randomly or buzz you at certain times. This is just to build the muscle, because positivity and happiness is a muscle. 3 to 5 times during the day, stop what you're doing and think about 3 things that happened in that last period of time that you appreciated. You don't need to analyze it and look at the why and all that. Just write it down somewhere until you get used to it. Because what happens in your brain is that neurons that fire together wire together. So the more you practice something, the more you're building a super highway in your brain that's going to get you to appreciation quicker. And when you're there, what happens is your body begins vibrating differently. Ooh, this is a tough one today. These days, be open-minded. Be open-minded. Really learn to appreciate another's point of view. So learning how to go for the ask is actually going to help teach you become a better person. Become that's a wrong word. That's a judgmental word, isn't it? Become a different person. Become a more open person. Let's see, do I have a rubber band? I don't have a rubber band on my desk here. We all have a comfort zone, and we tend to stay within our comfort zones. But as you practice these things, we begin to spread and stretch our comfort zones. And the larger that we stretch our comfort zones, the more we're able to do. So this kid who was told, don't ask, and had that imprinted, can now pretty easily, I was in that moderate group. It's not always super easy, but I'm so much more comfortable. Why? Because I allowed my comfort zone to expand. So be open-minded and learn to appreciate others' points of view. Do good deeds. That's a wonderful way to show people how much you appreciate them. And it is the greatest human need. The greatest human need. The need for appreciation. So make sure you spread that around. That's William James, probably, I think, the first American psychologist that there was. Appreciation is the greatest human need. And the next one we have is communication. Boy, there's a million ways to talk about communication, isn't there? Here's the way I think about it. Communicate open and honestly, without blame, judgment, criticism, cynicism, and here it comes, folks, or sarcasm. Now, I know I know many of us love our sarcasm, but keep the sarcasm toned down, especially when you're out in a professional environment. I know you turn on a TV program, I watched, what did I watch the other night? I DVR'd Will and Grace. I mean, come on, makes you laugh. It's great. But if we actually behave that way in the world, we wouldn't make very many friends. So if you're keeping, and this is a topic that comes up a lot in companies, oh yeah, but we love being sarcastic. Yeah, you love being sarcastic, but when you bring a new member into your group, that person feels like an outsider because sarcasm is personal and private in many situations. So watch the sarcasm. Communicate open and honestly without blame, without judgment, without criticism, without cynicism. Put that on a post-it note. I love that one. Communicate clearly, concisely, and quickly. People don't have a lot of time these days. So learn how to become your best edited self. And dear Lord, I am still working on this because I'm a storyteller and I love the richness of a story with details. But I am really aware that there are people who have different styles than I have. For instance, Raylyn has a very different style than I have. And I have to be aware of the fact that I want to tell her a story, and she sometimes just needs the facts. So be really, really aware of how you can edit yourself so that you stay in rapport, and you'll be learning about that very soon in one of our upcoming webinars, so that you can stay in that beautiful feeling of rapport with your donor or your prospect. Give positive feedback 3 to 5 times more than negative. And I'm going to tell you that when you make a vow to do this, you'll start noticing how often you go to give negative feedback. Don't do it this way. I wouldn't do it that way. Think about it when you're giving feedback a lot, and make that another vow. Positive feedback 3 to 5 times more than negative. And I'm going to tell you why we have that number. Because when the ratio of positivity to negativity is 3 to 1, it's a tipping point. And it's a tipping point that takes you from languishing to flourishing. And we want to flourish, and we want all our business communities to flourish as well. And when you can take that positivity and get to a ratio of 5 to 1, it is proven that you then become a high-performing organization, or if you're talking about yourself, you become a high-performing individual when your positivity to negativity is 5 to 1. And I'm still practicing. Keep people in the loop with your communication. Lots of people need to know what you've done. Lots of people need to help you follow up on being successful. So keep people in the loop, and do not make assumptions. You know what they say about making assumptions. So keep people in the loop. Don't make assumptions about people. And then as we think about communication, there's 2 parts to communication. There's the how, there's the talking, there's the listening. But there's also the fact that what we are communicating is information. So when you think about your communication style, think about who needs to know what, when, how often, and in what form. I'm pausing for a moment because that's a lot to take in. Who needs to know what, when, how often, and in what form? When things fall through the cracks, it's usually because people haven't communicated something to another person, or another department, or back to the donor when you promised. So pay attention to all these pieces of communication. Now the last one on the list here, or the second to last one on the list now, I put on the list. I've never actually had a CEO tell me that kindness is important in building loyal relationships. But I am a CEO. Actually, I'm a Chief Inspiration Officer. I call myself a CIO. Kindness is really important. Kindness is a force. It's a force that is so potent that if, for instance, Diana, Raylyn, and I were together, as we have been, And if I did something kind for Raylyn, my body would start pumping out more serotonin, more dopamine, more of those really good biochemicals, the kind they call them the rest and digest chemicals. Raylyn's body would begin pumping out the same kind of biochemicals, because I'd just done a kindness. And Diana, had she observed it, her body would mimic ours. So kindness is a force that is so potent in nature that it not only changes your biochemistry, but it changes the biochemistry of the person you're giving the kindness to and anyone who observes it. And it amplifies the trust, the respect, the appreciation, and the communication. So kindness actually amplifies the other qualities. And, you know, I believe that the brain runs on questions. So just put the question in your head, how can I be kind today? And let your brain figure it out. Don't make a list. Don't look it up on the internet. Just allow yourself the question, how can I be kind today? And you'd be surprised what begins happening. So as I said, in its presence, in the presence of kindness, the body creates the biochemistry of well-being, and we all want others to be well in our presence and have it felt by the recipient and the deliverer. And the reason it works that way is that it is a quality of the heart. And we are all connected, heart to heart. And the other thing that kindness does is it makes an experience with you memorable. Whether you're at TJ Maxx checking out or whether you're in front of your most important donor, that kindness, that appreciation, that different way of looking at things, wow, it makes that experience memorable. They're going to want to do business with you. Just a quick story that I hadn't thought about, and then we'll move on fairly quickly from here. I train groups of salespeople for actually it was a local company, and I've been back 3 times to work with them. They called me specifically because they wanted relationship building, not sales. And they were mostly men. When I first worked with them, there were 40 men in the room. By the second time, there were a few women in the room, but they were mostly men. And I told them that before they went to see one of their clients, they were a company that did commercial landscaping. And once a year, that person had to go in and do the ask. They had to ask the client to renew the contract. And their renewals were very low, and that's one of the reasons I was called in. So what I told them to do was to sit in the car before they get out of the car to see their client, to sit in the car. And here's now you have to imagine this. There's a room of 40 men. I said, take your right hand, put it on top of your heart, like you're doing the Pledge of Allegiance. Put your other hand on top of that. Close your eyes and think of something you really, really appreciate. Could be that you just had a great hoagie for lunch. Don't make it a big deal, but something that you really, really, really appreciate. Then get out of the car and go see your client. Because what it does is it changes the vibration all throughout your body. So when you walk in, you're walking in with a really wonderfully yummy vibe. So are you kind? Keep asking yourself that question. Now, this used to be called the On Track. And that's how I'm offering it to you, except that 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, whatever it was, I was in Mobile, Alabama, and I presented On Track to a group of CEOs, and at the end, one of them waved his hand in the air, and he goes, I think he might have said, young lady, he was a little older than I was. He said, you're missing a letter in your acronym. And I said, what letter is that? He said, S for sincerity, because every one of those things, trust, respect, appreciation, communication, and kindness, needs to be done with sincerity. And I agreed. They all work to build your relationships. So we have some time for questions. So ask me questions. Let me see if I can get my chat box up here so that I can, or Diana, can you go live verbally so I can hear the questions? I'm unmuting you, Diana, but I believe you may have to unmute yourself.
Yes, I think I'm unmuted. And if you have a question, just feel free to type it into the chat box. And I will read it up for you.
Yes. We don't have any questions in the chat box yet? Where is my chat box? There we are. Let's see. Okay, I don't see any questions. I know that somebody has a question. We have 39 people on this call. And Diana, we're sure we're seeing the public chat box, right? Oh,
Yeah. Yep.
Here,
So
here's
we're starting to
Maria.
get some questions in.
I see Maria. You want to read these to me, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. I can read them to you. So the first question we have here is that we've heard others say that there's a certain time frame or a number of touch points. So until you can make that ask. So is there a standard sort of time frame for the ask?
That's a really good question. Thank you for that. We're going to go back to feelings. You don't want it to drag on forever because there is some pressure. You generally have some sort of a deadline there that you need it. But what you want to make sure is that you've built the relationship. So you might want to check in with yourself and see how the relationship feels and see how comfortable the client feels. Now that may be something that's visceral for you, that you feel in your body, that it's appropriate. But I will encourage you to do it face-to-face because it's easier to get all the signals that the client is ready if you're face-to-face with them. Is there a number? Raylan, you might want to speak to that very specifically from SIP's point of view. I don't believe the way that I teach it, it shouldn't go on forever. So let's say you've already had 3 visits with the client. You may want to move in there. I don't know whether or not there is in the fundraising business, there is a specific formula. But in the world of business, it's when you and your client are in that sense of attunement where your signal, your body signal, your intuition says, now's a good time. You do have to be ready to do that. So you have to bring yourself, to be willing. You have to be willing to do that. You have to be willing. So always be asking yourself, is this the right time? And see what your body's telling you. Because if you're in communication with the other, if you're in rapport with the other, not just communication, if you're in rapport with the other, you'll know.
Great. Okay, we have quite a few more questions coming in, so I'm going to move on to a really good one. If you've already screwed up a relationship, what's the best way to mend it?
Ooh, lots of love. I would give it time. I would say how much time has passed. That would be my first question. I would ask you if I was coaching you. I would say how much time has passed. But people sometimes need a little bit of time, and then I would do a small gesture. Perhaps if you're going past that person's office, you might bring a tiny box of Godiva chocolate, something that would stand out with a little bit of a note that says, I was thinking about you and would love to have the opportunity to see you again. It really depends on your personality. It might be a postcard. It might be a thank you note. It might be, I would make it a small personal gesture to start with, because I don't know by the question how badly you screwed it up. So, and sometimes the answer is to ask for forgiveness. Is to say, I'm aware of the fact that you're upset with me, and I'd like to mend this relationship, and make that gesture.
That's great. Great advice. Okay, we have a few more, and if we don't get to all of them, of course, we can certainly address further questions. But the next one is actually really interesting, something I actually didn't think of as you were presenting, Joanna, but in the beginning when you presented on the tripod, why are the arrows moving in all one direction?
Oh, they're actually not, they're going around. Oh, somebody's very upset. The piece that's starred, that's you, that where the energy's coming from, the energy comes from you to your internal team, and from your internal team out to the external donor, client, whatever, back from them, because when they respond well to you and you get a good result, you feel good, so it comes back to you. So they're going around and around, but they begin with you.
Great. Okay. All right. I think we have time for maybe 2 more questions, so I'm just going to continue on here. What advice would you give to maybe a new development person or somebody who's maybe new to their role that's intimidated by the difference in stature between them and their client or their donor?
Intimidation is a filter. You're a human being and your donor is a human being. So I would look for something on that plane to relate to them with. So when you sit in their office, if you see a picture of people that look like grandchildren, say, are those your grandchildren? Or are those your children? Or simply, in this day and age, probably, are those yours? If there's a picture of their puppy dog, talk about, get to the point where you're relating human to human and get over the intimidation thing, because that's a power structure that you're allowing yourself to use to intimidate you. Because there's nothing intimidating about somebody's position. They've gotten a little further along in life than you've gotten, but you probably have qualities that they don't have. So I think that's a state of mind more than anything. So I would say, don't allow yourself to be intimidated, and think about, and just begin to percolate that and see what that means. I'm a human being. He's a human being. She's a human being. We all need to have lunch. I hope that answers.
I love that.
You know, and I just hope that answers the question sufficiently. You can always email me if you have a further question that you need.
Yeah, so we're going to get to just one last question here.
Okay.
When a client relationship isn't progressing, do you walk away or do you continue trying?
You never walk away. You may pull back a little bit, and I like the phrase drip on them a bit. I'm very fond of sending postcards and things like that. If the client relationship is not moving and you don't see an opening, I would turn my sights elsewhere for the time being, and I would do something in another medium, like sending a handwritten note so that you'll stand out, or sending a little gift or something like that, and saying, I've been thinking about you. Let me know when you want to get together again. You know, just leave the door cracked. Leave the door cracked and go turn yourself to something where you've got a chance of being more successful. Because what happens when it's not progressing is that we think it's us. We think it's us. And we go, oh, I'm not doing a very good job here. I haven't been able to sell them. But we think it's us. And what that does is it brings our energy level down. So go somewhere else, get your energy level back up, and put that on a slow perk.
Okay. All right. I think that's all the time questions.
Yes.
So I think we're going to turn it back and close up. Thank you.
We are. So let me get a little click going here. Come on, click. Very, very favorite quote of mine. Giving is the highest expression of potency. In the very act of giving, experience my strength, my wealth, my power. The experience is heightened, and vitality and potency fills me with joy. You read this before you go in for the ask, and remember that the act of giving is going to give your donor joy. Oh my gosh, you're going to think about it all differently. Remember, this is a 4-part series, so you want to join us for the whole series, because we're going to help you bring the best of yourself to the challenge. We're going to help you do the relationship dance with building rapport. And then the last one, we're going to handle the hard stuff, which is what happens when you're already there and you've got objections. This is a little shameless plug at your online booksellers. This is a little book that I just republished with great joy, 54 Ways to Stay Positive in a Changing, Challenging, and Sometimes Negative World. And if you would like the report that I wrote after all these years of going on track with my CEOs, you can find that at returnonhappiness.com/track. And I'm going to say goodbye here, and I'm going to say thank you so much for your attention and for your patience in the beginning as we were getting started. And thank you for coming. I'm thrilled that you decided to have lunch with us today. And Lori, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Right. I just wanted to say again, thank you for your patience with us in the beginning, or with me. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you, Joanna, for such great food for thought. I clearly have a lot to practice. My sticky is already up saying seek first to understand. Yeah. We look forward to next month's topic, bringing the best of yourself to the challenge, and I'll have my entry all worked out. So on behalf of TCI, South Florida, the Commonwealth Institute, have a wonderful rest of your day and an incredible weekend. Thank you all.
Bye-bye. Stay happy.